Thank you for joining us today.
It's good to be back on Friday afternoon.
Absolutely, absolutely. My name is Corbin Delaney. This is Mike Barker. Honestly, we're kind of doing a little bit of a test run. We've got some new equipment. Of course, we've got the next live event next week. You can actually RSVP for that right now. The link is right there at the bottom. If you go to lifedata.live/event for you to register for that. But we got some new equipment. We wanted to make sure that it works.
Sure, absolutely. Before we get to next Friday.
Absolutely.
At 2 p.m. Central.
Absolutely. So we thought we'd use this chance to open us up a little bit to let you guys ask some questions. So if you guys have any questions, you have any concerns or anything, let us know, and we can answer some questions for you.
Please ask, and we'll be glad to assist you.
Absolutely. So you can drop those in at any time. Of course, our last live event is available to watch. We talked about basically feeding the pony.
Right.
And so you have any leftover questions from that, that is still available to watch. You can go watch the recording for that. We had a big grand prize giveaway, and those winners were emailed, and so I think their prizes are out.
Okay.
Very good. Of course, so for next Friday, we'll be handling another live event. We'll have another one, and we'll do another giveaway. And so I think I've got a, let's see, I've got a little, yeah, again, that's just the lifedata.live/event. I thought I had a slide up, but I never uploaded it, so no slide. But if you got any of those questions, feel free to drop them in. I've got a few questions, Mike, that came in through just our that were privately messaged to us.
Well, let's take a look at those, Corbin.
All right. So the first one, we were told that they're dealing with hoof cracks.
Hoof cracks can be a major issue, especially if that crack wants to progress up into the coronary band, and especially get into some sensitive tissue where we actually have bleeding at that point in time. In fact, at that point, the horse is going to be pretty sore. It's going to be lame as well.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's many reasons for a hoofed crack. I would think the first reason, number one, would be poor hoof quality to begin with.
Absolutely.
And that poor hoof quality may have come about from an unbalanced diet.
Absolutely.
The horse not receiving the nutrients that it needs to enhance dermal tissue, which dermal tissue is the largest glandular organ in the horse. And it consumes massive amounts of certain nutrients, and those nutrients have to be provided on a daily basis, and not only on a daily basis, but in the right proportion and ratio to each other. So hoof quality is a factor. Of course, genetics can be a factor too. If we have thin hoof walls to begin with, and if we have an unbalanced diet, then we have two things right there that's working against hoof quality itself. Of course, we also know that the environment plays a tremendous role in hoof quality. And when we talk about the environment, we have ever-present bacteria. And it is the goal of that bacteria to invade that hoof capsule any way that it can.
Absolutely.
And that can come from a crack, it can come from an old nail hole, whatever the case may be. And once that bacteria sets up shop, it devours hoof tissue at that point, either on the exterior part around the frog, or if it gets inside the hoof capsule, then we're looking at an abscess.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to have to deal with that as well.
Absolutely.
So there's many factors that's involved when it comes to a crack itself. So our goal should be to provide a balanced diet. If we're suffering genetically to begin with, then the incorporation of a hoof supplement to specifically target the hoof, skin, mane, and tail is going to be very beneficial as well.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. So our main goal there when you're dealing with those is to, of course, promote that new hoof quality.
right.
But you're also going to have to protect that hoof,
Sure.
that crack area. You said that crack is an open source for bacteria.
Right.
That bacteria is getting in, that new hoof growth is going to suffer as well, right?
Sure, absolutely.
So what would you do? There's not necessarily a question on here, but what would you recommend as far as protecting that hoof crack
Well, of course, here at Life Data Labs, we have two products that's going to address that situation.
Absolutely.
Both of those are topicals. The first one that you can see right here is our finish, and then the other one is going to be our hoof clay. And the hoof clay is for a specific problem within that hoof capsule. And a prime example would be a crack.
Absolutely. And you can see this one right here is actually a liquid.
It is, sure.
This right here is actually just a clay.
Sure, absolutely. In fact, if you can see this, I'll open this up here to kind of show you this. It is a clay. It maintains this soft, pliable consistency. And we can take that after we have cleaned out the crack and fill the crack in with the hoof clay itself. And it is a very mild, non-caustic product.
Absolutely.
Or I wouldn't have stuck my finger in it to begin with, Corbin, okay?
Well, and that's always, that's something that we, of course, preach around here. And I know if you've seen any of our live events before, you've heard us say it once, we'll say it again.
Sure.
Those caustic chemicals can be rough on the hoof, and in some cases can even cause that hoof to dry out and create some of those cracks that we're having problems with.
That's right.
And so that being a non-caustic product is going to help, of course, prevent all the bacteria, but protect that area, produce new hoof growth, along with the Ferris formula,
Sure.
and help those cracks grow out.
And of course, the other product that we can use as well is the finish. As Corbin mentioned, it is in a liquid.
Absolutely.
Now, can you use both products at the same time? Absolutely. Use the clay first in your specific problem areas.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to take the liquid. We can either brush that on, sponge that on, but we're going to cover the entire hoof itself.
Absolutely.
The entire sole and then the entire hoof wall. So we said the environment, and we talked about bacteria. Another problem with the environment is the excess moisture or the lack of moisture. And I would like to think that if you're in extreme dry conditions, you're more prone to cracking and chipping at that point. And this particular liquid product is going to help regulate, it's going to help monitor that moisture level.
Absolutely.
Within that capsule. Now, if it's extremely wet, of course, when it's extremely dry, let me back up to that point. When it's extremely dry, what's going to happen is that hoof capsule wants to contract. And when it contracts, it actually dries out, and that's when you're very prone to that chipping and cracking.
Absolutely.
The other extreme is the excess moisture. And what the excess moisture tends to do is to soften the hoof capsule. So it wants to flatten, it wants to pancake, and that's a lot of times when we become very susceptible to an abscess. Absolutely. Especially if we have pancaking and stretching at the white line. That gives us a direct entry point for that bacteria to enter, set up shop, create the abscess thing.
Absolutely.
And then we have to deal with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, our past live event is available to watch. We have of course, our other ones as well. And I think we've done a whole live event just on hoof cracks. And so, if you're dealing with that, go back and watch that.
Sure.
It's a really great one and a lot of good information. Now, Mike, we did have a question from Kay. She says, hey, from Boonville, Mississippi, could you discuss treatments for proud flesh?
For proud flesh, okay. That's a little tricky there, Corbin. Okay. Of course, when we mention proud flesh, we know that we've had an injury. Number one, we know that the skin, the flesh, has been opened up there, and then we have a healing process to go through as well. And of course, a lot of times during that healing process, we end up with the proud flesh itself, which a lot of times we have to eliminate. So what I would suggest to you, number one, is to consult with your veterinarian, see what your vet suggests and the proper protocol to go through to address the proud flesh itself. Okay?
Absolutely. Okay. Again, if you have a question while you're watching today, drop it in the comments, and we'll be happy to take a look at it and do our best to answer it. Or I guess Mike will, and I'll read out the question. Okay, so the next one that we had from Facebook which kind of, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this one because this one ties in a little bit with the hoof cracks, was the best way to prevent a hoof abscess.
What is the best way to prevent a hoof abscess? Of course, we have to understand what creates the abscess, and we just mentioned that. That is, bacteria gets into that hoof capsule. So to prevent that, we need to have a good, healthy foot to begin with good, thick, strong hoof walls, plenty of sole depth there.
Absolutely.
A good, tight sole hoof wall junction.
Absolutely.
Okay. We also need to be sure that we're providing a balanced diet. We also need to protect the foot from the environmental issues that we just mentioned. Okay. And if we do that, then we're doing our best to avoid an abscess itself. Of course, yes, an abscess can be created from a puncture wound, which would be something totally unforeseen itself. But that's a different cause of an abscess in itself from just a general cause. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Let's see. Well, this one ties in to, of course, our next live event, which
next
is
Friday.
Which is going to be on managing laminitis. It's next Friday. But what causes laminitis?
Well, you know, that's a good question in itself. And next Friday we can get into the general types of laminitis, whether that is an acute case or whether that's a chronic case, and we'll kind of cover that itself. Of course, the three main types of laminitis, you have your sepsis-induced, which is created from an infection or a fever internally within the system of the horse. You could have a supporting limb issue that would create a laminitic situation in one foot. But the most common cause of laminitis today is created from the endocrine system of the horse, and we'll refer to that as endocrinopathic laminitis. And we'll cover that next Friday as well. And of course, when we talk about the endocrine system of the horse, there's a couple of problems that is created from the systems. Number one is Cushing's, and the other one is IR, or insulin resistant. And then, of course, with IR, if we have that overweight horse and that horse is experiencing laminitis, then we have that equine metabolic syndrome going on. Absolutely. So that's just a general overview of some causes of laminitis itself. Absolutely. And we'll delve more deeply into this topic next Friday. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you're wondering on how to register for that, you can go to lifedata.live/event. Of course, it's free to watch next Friday. It's going to stream from both Facebook and YouTube. Start at 2 o'clock Central Time.
Sure.
Like always, here in the
We'd be glad for you to join us.
Absolutely. All right. So the next question, which dives into a little bit of what we talked about our last event with the feeding the pony, but best feeding time.
The best feeding time.
Do we want to do morning or evening?
Well, that's a good question in itself, by all means. And of course, you know, if we're talking about the pony or a horse that's overweight, our number one goal is to get the excess weight off the horse itself.
Absolutely.
And of course, anytime we have that overweight situation, then those horses are very much prone to the metabolic problems. And if you have metabolic problems and you're overweight, then you're very much subject to a bout of laminitis. Absolutely. Okay? Of course, one of the leading causes of laminitis when it comes to nutrition is that green, lush grass. And the question was, well, when is the best time to allow our pony or our horse to graze if they're able to do that? And the best time is the early morning hours, okay?
Absolutely.
Let's get them off of that green grass in the afternoon, because in the afternoon hours, that sugar level is going to be at a peak. It's going to be at its highest. So the early morning hours is the best time to allow that if we're able to do that. And we know that we have some ponies, some horses that have the equine metabolic problem, and the best we can do is just grass hay in a dry lot. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Okay. Let's see. We got another one of these that were sent in earlier. Let's take this one right here. I know right now, of course, here in Alabama, we're dealing with a ton of rain, a ton of muddy, bacteria-driven fields. So best treatment for thrush.
The best treatment for thrush, number one, is management. Okay. If we can avoid the wet, muddy conditions, that would be in our favor.
Absolutely.
Of course, we know that a lot of horses don't have that situation. They're out 24/7, okay? So the next option, if we have a case of thrush, is to use a product that's going to be non-caustic, meaning that it's not going to kill, it's not going to burn hoof tissue when you make the application. Because a lot of times when we're at a trade show, and Corbin has worked many trade shows now, and he's heard from individuals that have a thrush problem, that it's an ongoing problem. It becomes a cycle.
Goes away, comes back.
That's
goes
right.
away,
It's just a continuous battle. And a lot of times we'll ask, well, what are you using? And a lot of times it's something that's very caustic. And what happens is we actually kill the bacteria, but in the process we're killing tissue as well. And then that tissue becomes a food source for bacteria to come back.
Absolutely.
Of course, now a lot of this has to do with management on the part of the horse owner, picking up feed, cleaning the feed on the daily basis as well.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, as we mentioned earlier, we have two good products. We have a liquid Ferris Finish, and then we have the hoof clay as well that does a great job in controlling and preventing thrush.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know we got your hoofs down here. Can we give a little little demonstration?
Yeah.
Use one of our fancy new cameras here.
Sure.
Let's see.
Let me get this out of the way here, okay? Of course, this is a hoof model here. And of course, what this hoof model here is a trim side versus the side where we've actually gone too long before the foot was trimmed. But I'm going to use this as our example. Most of the time, if we have a problem with thrush, it's going to encounter or it's going to want to affect the frog itself here. And the worst part of the frog to have to deal with thrush is right here in the central sulcus, right here between the heel bulbs, if you can see that there.
Here, I can scoot over a little bit if you want.
That is very difficult to deal with. And we need to make sure, number one, when the foot is trimmed, that it's balanced itself. We don't want to have the medial or the lateral side to be higher or lower, so we want to have a balanced hoof, so that if we have an unbalanced, what this does is this actually causes shearing here, and that works against the healing process. But if we use the hoof clay, then what we're going to do, we can apply this with our finger after we have picked out either side of the frog. And if this is an issue here in the central part, then we're going to clean this out as good as we can. And then we're going to just take some clay, and all we're going to do is we're going to fill in and get us a good coating here in that particular area. That's all we're after. We're not trying to fill that up at all. We just want a good coating. And if the horse is in some normal conditions as far as the environment, this is going to last 2, 3, 4 days, and then we can come back and we can do another application. If the problem is right here in the central part, we're going to try to work the hoof clay in as well, back here in the central part between the heel bulbs. If this is very deep, and if the horse is lame and a little sore because it has gotten into sensitive tissue here, I like to use the finish a lot of times. And what I like to do is, after I've cleaned this out, is try to flush this out with the finish itself. And that helps to kill off and protect that area there.
Absolutely.
Of course, one thing that we need to keep in mind too, this is not going to heal itself. So what the horse has to do, it has to regrow, it has to regenerate all of this.
Absolutely.
And of course, another thing that we can do is consider the addition of our hoof supplement Farrier's formula to help regrow this foot internally over a period of time.
Absolutely.
So,
and of course, we know that a healthier hoof is more resilient to those problems such as thrush, white line disease, and so on.
you're absolutely right, Corbin. If we got a good, healthy hoof capsule, we're less likely to have the bacterial issues. That's correct.
Absolutely. Well, we're only going to take a few more questions.
Okay.
Of course, we've got the live event next week, so definitely we're preparing for that and getting ready for that. So we hope you can attend that.
And if you have some questions, go ahead and submit those.
Absolutely.
If there's a specific area when it comes to laminitis that you would like for us to address.
Absolutely.
Do that.
Absolutely. And we usually make a post on Facebook asking, please comment and let us know the questions, and we go over those, and a lot of our presentation is designed after those questions that you have. So definitely submit those. You can add them into the event. There's a different post in there that you can comment on there and ask those questions, or do it right here in this video. We'd be happy to take them from here. I know even though we're live now, we won't be live later on today. So even if you're watching this later on, you can still drop those in and we'll take a look at them. Let's see. Best way to manage weight on my horse.
The best way to manage weight is we've got to separate calories from the nutrients that horse needs on a daily basis. So calories, carbs is the enemy of the overweight horse. Those calories and carbs are going to come from that green grass, number one. And if we're feeding that horse, we're giving that horse calories and hopefully nutrients as well. But a lot of times, if we're feeding a complete feed and our horse is gaining weight, what we like to do is we want to cut back on the amount of feed that we're actually feeding the horse. And if you look at your feed tag, it will give you a recommended daily feeding amount. And if we're not meeting that, then we're cutting our horse short nutritionally as far as the mineral, vitamins, and amino acids that horse needs on a daily basis. Now, the true can be the same if we have a hard keeper. And if we exceed what the recommended amount is, then we're providing too many nutrients and we create a problem as well.
Absolutely.
But calories, we have to be able to separate calories from the nutrients that the horse needs daily. We need to monitor the grazing time as well and the amount that we're allowing to graze. And then, of course, here at Life Data Labs, a good hay forage balancer comes into play as well.
Absolutely.
And we have a product called Barn
Yeah,
Bag.
that's it right here. That's the barn bag.
And it's going to complement the basic diet of the horse, which is grass and hay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. All right. All right. Let's do one more question, and then let's call it a Friday.
Sure.
All right. Well, again, let's go back to laminitis. What is the most common form of laminitis?
The most common form, as we mentioned just a little while ago, is intracampathic. That causes more laminitis today than anything else.
Absolutely.
Our overweight horses, insulin resistance, and Cushing's disease and equine metabolic syndrome.
Absolutely.
That's the leading cause today of laminitis.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us today, and we appreciate it. Next live event is Managing Laminitis, which will be next Friday at 2 o'clock Central Time.
Right.
So drop your questions in, and we hope to see you Friday. In the meantime, we hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Sure.
Anything else to add?
That's it, Corbin.
All right.
Thank you for joining.